Hello from the end of week one of COP27, and we've seen about 6 days of negotiations now. And in yesterday's press conference, we heard about the numbers of attendees for the first time in Egypt this year. And it's the second biggest COP ever recorded. So there's about 30,000 people on site in Sharm el-Sheikh, and actually another 15,000 dialing in through the virtual platform as observers, which is what we're doing at the Wildlife Trusts. So it just goes to show how much you can actually look at and take part in just from doing the online option, which is a really good one for us, because actually in the conference centre we wouldn't be able to attend all of the meetings in any case. And what we've seen this week really is, again, quite a focus on loss and damage, and we'll be going into week 2 to see where that ends up. And also a bit of a lack of nature-related events. So there are more than 40 side events happening. These are sort of meetings and presentations in and around the formal negotiations of the conference. But as yet, not really much in the negotiations on nature itself, and it will be Nature Day next week. But again, we haven't seen a huge amount coming out of each of the theme days for COP27. Partly maybe because they have pushed together 3 or 4 different topics on each theme day. But we'll be bringing you more and having a look at some of those side events as well. So I'll try and update you on those next week. Now, the big thing, which is very relevant for the Wildlife Trust, is negotiations that are happening on Article 6. And what that part of the discussions is about is on countries trading carbon credits with each other, as hopefully a means of helping them to reduce their greenhouse gas emissions and increase ambition. Now, the problem is it's taken 6 or 7 years for the Article 6 negotiations to even get to a point where the general rulebook was decided, and that was done in Glasgow at COP26 last year. And what we're seeing this year in the negotiations is the technical discussions happening on some of the ways that that rulebook will be implemented. And that includes things like what counts as a carbon offset, what it means for things like permanence, so how long lasting they need to be, and also the rules governing the different mechanisms of trading, monitoring and evaluation and verification of those carbon credits as well. The other things we're expecting to happen today and tomorrow are increased pledges from countries on methane, reducing methane emissions, which is a really big contributor to the sort of high short-term global warming we're seeing. And methane has a much, much higher warming potential. It has a much bigger warming effect than carbon dioxide, but it also stays in the atmosphere for less time. But as the IPCC has said, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, reducing methane is absolutely critical if we're going to get anywhere near meeting our global climate goals. So we'll be seeing what happens on methane, and also looking at next week and going into the final bit of the negotiations, there will be discussions starting on what's called the cover decision. And this is the, if you like, the main outcome of the conference, signalling where countries are on increasing their ambition and reducing their greenhouse gas emissions. And last year we had the Glasgow Climate Pact coming out of COP26. So it'll be really interesting to see what the top priority issues are for COP27. And delegate leaders are meant to be meeting tomorrow, Saturday, to start negotiating that text. So coming back to the issue of carbon offsets, what's happening in Egypt again has quite a strong bearing on UK policy as well. And I would say policy on carbon offsetting and nature-based solutions is probably 5 to 10 years behind where we'd ideally like it to be. And one of the problems we have is really understanding a common set of principles for what constitutes a good quality offset, how you count the carbon in the offsets, how the trading works, and who does the scrutiny, who does the peer review of those carbon offsets. Now, we do have schemes across the UK, and those are increasing. We've got Peatland Code and Woodland Carbon Code. Some of the wildlife trusts are starting to set up their own schemes as well. But what we're lacking is that common set of principles. So, for example, what does permanence mean? How long should these carbon offsets be sticking around for? You know, is 50 years enough, or is it 100 years? Now, we would probably say it should be 100 years or even more. And there are ways to reduce the risk for nature-based solutions so that you get that kind of longevity. But having a standard and common policy on this would be incredibly helpful for expanding the market, which is really taking off at the minute. If you look at global investment in nature-based solutions over the last 3 or 4 years, you know, it's absolutely rocketed and is increasing exponentially. And really, we have very little idea as to whether those offsets are really leading to real carbon removals or emissions reductions. And it's quite a worrying time on carbon offsetting, really, because without that rule book, you know, we really are starting to see a bit of a wild west in some places in terms of carbon trading. And The other thing that really is important for us, obviously, on the offsetting side is those co-benefits. So through the Article 6 negotiations, parties are looking at ensuring that, for example, a good percentage, around 5% of offset credits, goes to the Adaptation Fund to help fund adaptation activities all over the world. And another few percent, they're saying, should be cancelled out. And what that means is you trade those carbon credits, but they effectively get ruled out, and that's trying to ensure that we're getting this increased ambition. Now, we don't have rules like that in the UK for UK-based offsetting, and that's again something we'd really like to see more of, particularly, obviously, for the Wildlife Trust's a real emphasis on nature-based solutions. And where I'm standing today, obviously, has really strong linkages to this as well. So today I'm at Wildmoor Heath, and this is another Berks, Bucks and Oxon Wildlife Trust Reserve. Again, quite near me, so it's near Sandhurst and Crowthorne and Broadmoor. And as the name would suggest, it's another lowland heath habitat, but a little bit different to Chobham Common, where I was on Wednesday. There's quite a lot of diversity of habitat here, so there's a lot of ponds and pools. It's quite a boggy area, and it's, again, an absolutely prime habitat for ground nesting birds like nightjars and woodlark, and it's a real stronghold as well for all different kinds of reptiles, including grass snakes, adders and slowworms. So obviously I'm being careful where I'm stepping today. So that's it for today. I'll be back on Monday with another update, looking at what's happened over the weekend with the cover decision, with Article 6 and with loss and damage. And I'll see you soon.